This morning, the Denver Broncos released their first unofficial depth chart prior to their first preseason game against the Indianapolis Colts. Sean Payton, in his press conference today, said that if it were up to him, he wouldn't even release this depth chart right now. It's something that the Broncos basically released because they had to release it per NFL rules. And the way that this depth chart is structured is to not give away too much information, not only to the Indianapolis Colts and the rest of the Broncos' preseason opponents, but obviously their Week 1 regular season opponent, the Seattle Seahawks. They don't want to give away personnel information. They don't want to give away who's going to be the starting quarterback Week 1. That is why they have very cleverly disguised this depth chart. I want to bring in this tweet from Zach Stevens of DNVR. The Broncos took an old school approach to building their first unofficial depth chart. Every rookie is listed last in their position regardless of reps and or performance so far. This is why Bo Nix is listed as the Broncos' third string quarterback behind Jarrett Stidham as the 1 and Zach Wilson as the 2. I have been out at training camp every single day save for one day when I couldn't get out there. Zach Wilson has not gotten snaps ahead of Bo Nix in well over a week, almost 2 weeks now. We're getting to the point where it's very clear that Zach Wilson is not the guy. He's not going to start. He's not ahead of Bo Nix on the depth chart. If they actually shifted this the way that the depth chart looks in the Broncos' mind right now, Jarrett Stidham would be the 1. That is true. It is still the rotation between Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix every other day getting reps with the 1s. Jarrett Stidham has the inside track to start in Indianapolis for the first preseason game. That's always been the case. But Zach Wilson has very clearly been behind Bo Nix. And I know that I get a lot of flack for being a Zach Wilson hater. I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't hate Zach Wilson. I want Zach Wilson to succeed. Zach Wilson is very clearly behind Jarrett Stidham and Bo Nix in his performance. He's still missing guys on the wrong shoulder on throws. He's still struggling with the operational stuff at the line of scrimmage, cadence, identifying the Mike linebacker. He's still really struggling with his reads. He's still scrambling during 7-on-7 periods when he has open receivers. Sean Payton clarified, if there's nowhere to throw during a 7-on-7 drill, scrambling is okay, but he's had open receivers in these 7-on-7 drills, and he's passed on them to throw or to run because he's been kind of spooked back there. I want Zach Wilson to be able to shake that off, and if he does shake that off, he can become a really solid quarterback in the NFL just with his raw arm talent. But having arm talent and being physically gifted doesn't make you a good quarterback. It's all between the ears, and right now, Zach Wilson is at a point in his career where he was given no favors in New York to develop that side of his game. Now, he has the opportunity to do so, but the best chance for him to do so is to sit back and learn and grow. And the proof is in the pudding. If you've been out at training camp even one day, you can clearly tell Zach Wilson needs time to grow and get better. He had a good camp yesterday, but then today he regressed back to the mean where he was still the same Zach Wilson. He was throwing receivers to the wrong shoulder, which would get them hit in real life game situations. He's just not producing at the level that a starting quarterback at the NFL needs to produce at. So Zach Wilson is the clear-cut number 3 quarterback for the Denver Broncos. They're still going to give him a chance to compete for the backup role, but Stidham, the gap between Stidham and Wilson is as big as the Grand Canyon. It really is. I just cannot emphasize that enough. Zach Wilson needs time to sit, and that is okay. So at the end of the day, man, Bo Nix is listed as third because he's the rookie, and the way this whole depth chart is structured, rookies are listed as the third string or fourth string, fifth string, whatever. But if you were to look at this based on how the Broncos are approaching this in camp, Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham are alternating reps every single day, save for today because Jarrett Stidham did get the second day in a row of first team reps, an indication that he is going to start in Indianapolis on Sunday. But prior to that point, for the past, week and a half now, it's been Stidham, Nix. And I anticipate that to continue. Stidham's going to start in Indianapolis. Bo Nix will start versus Green Bay. So moving on from the quarterback position, let's now jump into the wide receiver position. And I don't exactly like the way that they listed this. I wish that they would list slot receiver as well, but Sean Payton doesn't want to give away personnel groupings too much. So they just have left receiver and right receiver. Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick are listed as your two top dogs. Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds as your second guys. And all four of those guys are going to be rotated in. They're all going to see significant snaps this season. So basically, you can not necessarily have a designated guy who's going to be your starting slot receiver every single week. Some days Tim Patrick might start in the slot and somebody else like maybe Josh Reynolds would start outside. Then, maybe you'd have Marvin Mims in the slot, Tim Patrick outside, or Marvin Mims in the slot, Josh Reynolds outside. There's so many different ways that you can mix up these personnel groupings, and the Broncos don't want to tip their hand on that. So I can understand why they put it this way, but these four receivers are all going to be mixed in, and they're all going to be seeing significant snaps this season. As far as the reserve guys are concerned, you've got Little Jordan Humphrey and Brandon Johnson as your top reserve guys, followed by David Sills and Philip Dorsett. Overall, I think that right now you're probably going to see Troy Franklin eventually get up towards where Philip Dorsett is and where David Sills is. Michael Bandy is listed as one of the reserves as well, along with Jalen Virgil, and they've got Troy Franklin all the way here at the bottom. Franklin will eventually become one of these guys who is going to make the active roster. And then you've got Devon Vele, he's over here as well. Because, again, he's the rookie. Rookies are going to be listed at the bottom of the depth chart. But I think that Franklin and Vele both have strong chances to ascend up the depth chart. And as far as a little hint towards who I think makes the active roster, I think that both Brandon Johnson and Little Jordan Humphrey both end up on the practice squad. The same thing that the Broncos did last year where they'd elevate them, use up their elevations, promote them to the active roster when an injury would come up. They're still going to have a very significant role, and they're probably going to all play significant snaps for the Denver Broncos. Just, it's going to be through roster manipulation via the practice squad. They're getting good performance out of their wide receivers in camp. They really are. Philip Dorsett's looked good. Jalen Virgil, he hasn't flashed too much, but he still looks solid in limited action. Troy Franklin, he's growing each and every single day. Devon Vele looks fantastic. David Sills looks good. Michael Bandy looks good. This entire receiving core this offseason has been very impressive to me, and the Broncos have a very good problem to have because they have so much depth that they might end up letting a very good player go. And if you're letting a really good player go because he's the odd man out and you have a bunch of other good players ahead of him, again, that's a good problem to have. Moving into the offensive line, you've got Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, obviously your starter left tackle, left guard, no surprise there. At center, Luke Wattenberg is listed as the starter. It's not listed as Luke Wattenberg or Alex Forsythe. It's not listed the same way that they're listing Jonas Griffith and Cody Barton, for example. So that indicates that Luke Wattenberg is the leader in the clubhouse right now, and based on the reps that he's been getting with the ones at camp, that would also indicate that Luke Wattenberg is the leader in the clubhouse, and he's looked good. I gotta give Luke Wattenberg all the credit in the world because he has improved his game significantly over the last couple of years to the point where I'm actually comfortable with Luke Wattenberg as a starter. I could not say the same even 1 year ago, but now, with how much he's developed, I am comfortable with Luke Wattenberg. Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey, obviously, to finish things out. No surprises there. As far as your swing tackles, you've got Matt Parrott on the left side and Alex Palczewski on the right side. I think Palczewski in particular has continued his really strong camp from the camp that he had last season, which was also really strong. Calvin Throckmorton, your starting starting swing left guard. Your swing left guard, I mean, can't talk today, but you know what I mean. Alex Forsyth listed as the clear-cut number 2 center right now. Will Sherman, he is listed as the backup right guard. And then, obviously, you got Palczewski, DeMontre Jacobs, and Frank Crum are your third-string tackles at the respective right and left position. And I really feel like Crum has struggled at times during camp, so he probably needs a little bit more time to develop. I gotta be honest, I question if Crum's gonna even make the practice squad right now. I know that a lot of people in Broncos country like him, but he needs to show a little bit more in the preseason to, in my opinion, stick around here. Nick Gargiulo is the third-string left guard. Sam Mustipher is the third-string center. He was brought in as some insurance in the event that neither Wattenberg or Forsyth stepped up. Looks like Wattenberg is stepping up, and that's not to say Forsyth isn't playing well either. So Sam Mustipher is essentially expendable at this point. And then you've got Oliver Jervis at right guard. Tight end. This is where things are going to get a little bit interesting. I know fans are questioning why Adam Troutman is listed as tight end 1 and Greg Dulcich is listed as tight end 2. That's the same thing as it was last year, and I will tell you why. Adam Troutman is your starter as a true Y tight end. He is the guy who lines up in line, run blocks, pass blocks, and can obviously catch passes. But Greg Dulcich is more of a move guy, a guy that you can put as a big slot, a guy that you can put not on the complete end, but you can put kind of outside on the end. There's a lot of things that you can do with him, and then you can even split him out wide as a pure wide receiver. Greg Dulcich is so versatile. He's one of those jokers, but he's not the starting inline tight end. That is Adam Troutman. Greg Dulcich will have a big role this year, knock on wood if he can stay healthy. If not, enter Lucas Kroll, who's going to fill that exact role. And that's the role that Kroll filled last year when he started to step in and get more snaps for the Denver Broncos. Lucas Kroll right now is the third guy, but he also figures to get snaps as well because the Broncos really like all 3 of their top tight ends. Nate Atkins has also made an impact, but he's gotten some snaps at fullback as well. Keep an eye on that because he's rotated a little bit with Michael Burton. Then you've got a couple of reserve guys that are probably not going to make the roster, if we're being honest, unless they have big preseasons in Hunter Kampmoyer and Thomas Yasmin. Moving into the running back position, this is another example of rookies being listed at the bottom of the depth chart when, in reality, that is not the rotation that is being shown at Broncos training camp. Javonte Williams is your clear-cut number 1. He's looked fantastic in camp. Jaleel McLaughlin, in my eyes, is actually the number 2 ahead of Samaje Perine, but the Broncos don't want to tip their hand on that. McLaughlin has been sensational in camp. He figures to see more and more snaps, but his small frame may limit what he can do, especially on third downs when he's going to be asked to pass block. Audric Estime is very clearly ahead of Tyler Beatty on the real depth chart. Audric Estime has looked really good. He's looked explosive. He's looked physical. I like what we've seen so far from Estime in camp. And I think that right now, if we fast forward to the regular season, the running back rotation could easily look Javonte 1, Jaleel 2, and Audric Estime 3. That's something that I would definitely keep an eye on, and Estime could very easily turn into that change of pace guy, that guy that on short yardage and red zone situations can absolutely bully you up front. So I'm really excited about Audric Estime this year. And Blake Watson has been back for a few days now from his injury, and he's getting more and more comfortable as the days go on. I would also probably have him ahead of Tyler Beatty right now. Beatty's a guy who is a good guy to have in the room as a veteran, but I don't think Tyler Beatty's going to ultimately end up making the 53-man roster. He may make the practice squad again, but we'll see there. And then they've got Michael Burton listed at fullback, but they don't want to give anything away with Nate Atkins, who they've also given snaps at fullback this offseason. Moving into the defensive side of the ball. For your interior defensive line, no surprise with the three starters, Zach Allen, DJ Jones at nose tackle, and then John Franklin Myers on the outside. You've got Angelo Blackson and Elijah Garcia as your rotational DNs, along with Malcolm Roach. Ioma Uwazurike rejoined the Broncos today at practice, so he's going to try to work his way back into the rotation. Matt Henningsen's looked good, and then you've got Jordan Jackson and Jordan Miller here, who are probably going to be fighting for possible practice squad opportunities for the Denver Broncos. The interior defensive line for the Broncos last year was one of the biggest weaknesses, and it is now turned into one of the biggest strengths. As far as edge rusher is concerned, strong side starter is Jonathan Cooper. Weak side starter is Baron Browning, no surprise. Thomas Nkoum is at a fantastic training camp. You can see his speed off the edge. He looks really, really good out there. So he is probably got an inside track right now to make the active roster. Then you've got Nick Benito. Jonah Ellis has... he's had moments, but he's also had some moments where he's struggled. So Ellis is definitely learning the position right now, and as the rookie, he's going to be listed further down the depth chart. You got Darrell Nachami on the weak side, Jalen Allen on the strong side, and then Dondre Tillman, who I thought's actually had a pretty good camp, is on the weak side. As far as inside linebacker is concerned, Alex Singleton is obviously one of your entrenched starters, and right now they've got Jonas Griffith or Cody Barton listed as the second starter. Right now, this competition is pretty neck and neck. It's going to probably take the preseason reps for us to truly determine who's ahead as far as the linebacking competition between Cody Barton and Jonas Griffith. You got Justin Sternada as your primary rotational guy and special teams ace. Lavelle Bailey has looked strong, and Sean Payton has praised him throughout the offseason process. Andre Smith, who has switched to Caden Stearns, number 23. He was out there rocking 96, but that is now back with Ioma Uwazurike. And then the Broncos brought back former Air Force linebacker Alec Mock. So he's going to be competing for a rotational spot in the inside linebacking core. And given the fact that the Broncos are emphasizing bigger bodies, or the NFL is emphasizing bigger bodies with the new kickoff rules on special teams, that could lead to guys like an Alec Mock or an Andre Smith, somebody like that, to make the roster because of these new roles on the kickoff unit. Cornerback, I'm glad that they actually listed this with modern terminology with the nickel as opposed to just left and right cornerback. So Pat Surtain, your starting left corner, obviously. Jaquan McMillan, your starting nickel. And this is where things get a little bit spicy. They've got Damarri Mathis or Riley Moss listed as your starters at right corner, not Levi Wallace, who was getting the initial first team reps. Wallace suffered a hamstring injury last week and hasn't practiced since. That has probably opened the door for Damarri Mathis, who, I gotta admit, he has looked like he's shown some improvement over the course of camp. So, we'll see what happens, man. Right now, Damarri Mathis and Riley Moss are going to be duking it out for that right corner spot. Tremon Smith, primarily a special teams guy. Art Green, I'm kind of surprised he's listed this high on the depth chart, but again, got to put the rookie on the back there with Chris Abrams-Drain, but Drain has had a really solid camp on the outside. You've got backups on the nickel, Reese Taylor, man. Reese Taylor has had a very good camp. He's been a playmaker, flying all around the field, breaking up passes. I think he's had a couple of near interceptions. Dude has been all over the ball. I've been really impressed with Reese Taylor. Quentin Newsome, the rookie out of Nebraska, he's been all right. Nothing really to write home with Quentin Newsome's play. PJ Locke and Brandon Jones are listed as your two starting safeties, but Jones has been out most of training camp, and that has opened the door for guys like JL Skinner and Devon Key, who I think both have had very strong camps. Then you've got Tanner McAllister, Keidron Smith, and Omar Brown to round things out there. Nothing overtly noteworthy with those three guys. Obviously, you got Will Lutz as your kicker. Kickoffs, you've got Lutz, but then you've also got Trenton Gill who can kick off. And if he wins the punting competition, maybe the Broncos will want to elect Gill to be the starting kickoff man because he can be a little bit more consistent with placement and stuff like that. I'm not a special teams aficionado, but that could be the mindset of the Denver Broncos if they keep Trenton Gill as opposed to Riley Dixon. Mitchell Furboni as the long snapper. And then finally at returner, Marvin Mims is your starter both at kicker and punt returner, at kick and punt returner. Then you've got Tremont Smith behind him, but he's also really good as a gunner and protector on special teams unit, so I'd rather keep Smith there. Obviously, that's the plan, barring a Marvin Mims injury. Then you've got Jaleel McLaughlin as a rotational kick returner and Michael Bandy as a rotational punt returner. So that is the initial depth chart for the Denver Broncos. And again, rookies are listed at the bottom of each of their respective positions, regardless of snaps or performance at training camp. If you're basing it off that, Bo Nix definitely wouldn't be the third quarterback. Audric Estime would not be listed as far down as he is on the depth chart. And there's plenty of other examples as well. But Sean Payton doesn't want to give anything away. He wants to be as coy as possible with this, and I don't blame him. You don't want to give anything away to the Seattle Seahawks for your week one, and you also don't want to give anything away to the Indianapolis Colts and the rest of your preseason opponents, especially the Green Bay Packers, who you're going to be having those joint practices with, because it would allow them time to prepare for various personnel groupings. So you want to be as quiet as possible with that. All right, Broncos country, let me know in the comment section below, where do you feel like this quote-unquote depth chart that they've released, where do you think it doesn't really align with the actual depth chart in real life? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts, as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.